country. Mr. Speaker, those words coming from a bishop as respected as Bishop Oginde must begin to ring a bell in the minds of all public officers and every Kenyan, because when we listen to him, Mr. Speaker, I also heard him prescribe a very easy way out of this corruption problem. And he said, it's very simple. Don't ask, don't give, and don't take. If we were to then follow that prescription, perhaps we would live in a better country. The Speaker, Part 3 of this bill, Clause 10, makes reference to decision-making or people in positions of decision-making in elaborating what conflict of interest means. And I want to read that clause because, to me, it's a very important clause, Mr. Speaker. And it says, Clause 10, 1A, a public officer shall not make a decision or participate in making a decision relating to the exercise of an official power or the performance of a duty or function if the public officer knows that in the making of the decision, the officer would be in conflict of interest. Mr. Speaker, I have read this clause with more than passing interest. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have just passed a law on affordable housing. And if this law had been enacted before passing the affordable housing law, then perhaps the question that we should be asking ourselves would be, the persons holding public office who have been at the center of decision-making in the affordable housing law, are they conflicted or are they not conflicted? Mr. Speaker, I want to extend that thinking a little further and ask myself, a public officer working, say, in the Ministry of Interior or any ministry, who is an expert on national security and is paid by the government of Kenya. The Speaker, is that public officer conflicted if and when, during his free time, he gives lectures in a university to equip young people with matters national security? Is that public officer conflicted? I ask myself the second question, Mr. Speaker. A medical doctor who is an expert in maybe is an expert in maybe dental health, and he is paid by the government of Kenya in a public hospital. Under this new proposed bill, and through the jailer committee, are we making the conclusion that that medical doctor, in his free time, will be conflicted if he were to be found offering dental care in a private clinic or in a personal clinic? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, a mechanical engineer working, say, in the Ministry of Trade, and during their free time, they have established a garage for their son or their nephews, their cousins, their relatives, their friends. Are they conflicted? Mr. Speaker, this matter of conflict of interest is such an important matter that perhaps, and I said I would take time to look at the report by the jailer committee, perhaps we need to ask ourselves, to what extent do we go in defining conflict of interest? Or is it even possible to define conflict of interest in a law? Mr. Speaker, I say those things because I remember and I'm guided by our own standing orders Standing Order number 104 of the Senate, and it mandates and obligates a senator who wants to make a comment or debate on a matter of which they have pecuniary or proprietary interest to first declare that interest. The Speaker, guided by that, is then a declaration of interest. It's a public declaration of interest or a declaration of interest in writing. Is it a cure to the consequences of the conflict? So that then in that case, if I am a medic serving in a public hospital and I make a declaration in writing that I am also involved in a private clinic, is that writing enough to cure the consequences of the conflict? Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of Clause 7, and I want to see what the committee has said on the provisions of Clause 7 of the proposed law, that the Commission now can act suo motu on its own motion to go and investigate a conflict of interest. The Speaker, we live in this country, and we know, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but we know, the Speaker, that commissions that are supposed to be independent in discharge of public service, more than once, have been used by those in authority as weapons to harass and torment people who hold a different view, especially a political view. Mr. Speaker, I'm just saying this and cautioning that perhaps if this law will pass, the law must not be the reason why the EACC, and I've heard you say, Mr. Speaker, that JLAC is proposing bringing on board other entities and agencies that will implement the provisions of this law. I'm just praying and hoping that, Mr. Speaker, that when this bill becomes law, if it becomes law, then it will not be creating an excuse for either the EACC or any other public entity under the control of the current government or future governments to harass people who hold a different political opinion. Mr. Speaker, this is not a new thing that I'm saying. It has happened before. I hope it will not happen this time. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, let me reiterate that the reason why we legislate, we don't legislate, Mr. Speaker, for ourselves. We don't legislate for our political parties. We don't legislate for our coalitions. We legislate for this